Picture this. We're gliding through the cold, decaying, opulent halls of the Beast Castle. The air is thick with dust. It's totally isolated, and we finally come to rest on the glowing, enchanted magic mirror in the West Wing. But as we look into the glass, it ripples, and it doesn't reflect the terrifying furry face of the beast. No. Instead, it reveals a completely different face. It's the handsome, incredibly smug reflection of Gaston admiring himself. Okay, let's dive right into this, because this mirror, it isn't just showing us a man. It's actually a magical reflection of our inner world, our society itself, and the deeply ingrained prejudices we all hold. In this explainer, we're going to completely shatter our illusions about what it actually means to be a monster.
So who is the true beast? It's the ultimate question, isn't it? When we look closely at modern adaptations of Beauty and the Beast, particularly the iconic Disney versions, we see a narrative that completely flips the script on who the true villain actually is. The story asks us to look way past the obvious and interrogate the very nature of humanity. It sets up this fascinating dichotomy between two characters who represent completely opposite ends of the societal spectrum, challenging everything we think we know about heroism.
And this brilliantly illustrates that exact dichotomy. Let's look at Gaston. On the outside, he totally subverts our expectations of a villain because he perfectly resembles a classic heroic prince. I mean, he's tall, white, muscular, able-bodied, and the whole town basically worships him. But beneath that flawless, socially celebrated exterior, there lies a toxic, arrogant monster driven by hypermasculinity and hollow greed. He views the intellectual and independent Belle as nothing more than a prize to be possessed. He is the true beast of the story. Then, on the flip side, we have the beast. His exterior is terrifying and physically non-conforming, right? But underneath, he possesses a capable, gentle soul capable of profound growth. Which brings us to a massively important question. Think about it. Why is it so automatic for us, and for the villagers in this story, to associate physical perfection with moral goodness and physical difference with evil? This isn't just a fairy tale problem, folks. It's a very real-world societal issue.
Act 1. The corporeal standard.
To really unpack this, we're going to look at things through the revealing lens of critical disability studies and a dangerous societal concept known as the corporeal standard. So what is that? Well, it's basically a network of societal beliefs that projects one very specific type of body, able-bodied, conventionally attractive, standard, as the absolute perfect way to be a human being. Disability scholars sometimes call the person who fits this mold the normate. And in the world of the film, Gaston is the living, breathing embodiment of this corporeal standard. That's exactly why the entire town worships him and just totally forgives his horrendous personality. He fits the physical standard of perfection, so society automatically assumes he's inherently good.
Now, what's really interesting is how the creators deliberately tied physical deformity to morality. Take a look at the stained glass window from the opening prologue. In the original 18th century tale by Villeneuve, the prince was cursed simply because he refused to marry an evil fairy. It actually wasn't really his fault. But Disney explicitly changed the narrative to introduce what scholars call the moral model of disability. They made the prince's physical transformation into a beast a direct punishment for his bad morals, specifically his selfishness in turning away the unattractive beggar woman. It subtly reinforces this subconscious idea that physical differences are a punishment for being evil on the inside.
Furthermore, the story frequently forces the beast into pejorative stereotypes associated with disability. Just think about how the beast is treated throughout the film. He's a man in his 20s, yet he's constantly chided for roaring, told to show empathy, and literally educated on how to eat like a human. He's essentially raised by his servants like a sulky child. Disability scholars point out that this directly mirrors real-world ableist stereotypes, where disabled individuals are treated as infantile and like they constantly need to be managed and controlled by the able-bodied people around them.
Throughout all of this, Gaston's mere presence reinforces the beast's status as the excluded other. Because he doesn't conform to society's narrow definition of what's normal or beautiful, the beast is instantly labeled as a subhuman object of dread. So when Gaston and the beast finally have their showdown on the castle roof, it isn't just a cool action sequence. It's the beast physically confronting his own trauma and the hypermasculine ideal he used to represent before his curse. And how does the beast achieve true subjecthood? Not by throwing Gaston off the roof, no. He achieves it by restraining his animalistic tendencies and showing humanizing mercy to the very man who embodies that toxic corporeal standard.
Act 2. The mob and the fear of the other.
This societal reaction builds to a fiery, chaotic climax. Imagine the dramatic, terrifying sounds of the mob song swelling in the background. Gaston easily whips the villagers into a frenzied, murderous mob to attack the castle.
And here's the thing. He doesn't use logic, evidence, or reason. He weaponizes the community's inherent ableist fear of difference. The villagers literally confess their violence is born purely from a lack of understanding when they sing, "We don't like what we don't understand. In fact, it scares us." It is chillingly revealing.
This mob scene serves as an incredibly powerful cinematic metaphor for the marginalization of disabled or non-conforming individuals in the real world. Let's walk through the anatomy of this exclusion. First, there's an innate fear of the unknown, of a body that just doesn't conform. Second, the society instantly labels this other as a subhuman monster, a horror of nature as the texts describe. Finally, this label justifies isolating, hunting, and punishing the individual. The mob perfectly illustrates how systemic violence is enacted against marginalized people simply because they fall outside the boundaries of normal.
The true danger in the story is not the beast's claws or his temper. It's society's total lack of empathy. The beast's isolation in that dark castle isn't just the result of a magical curse. It's a direct reflection of how a judgmental society actively excludes those who look different, forcing the other into hiding. The environment itself is what truly disables him. The mob proves that society's fear and lack of empathy are far, far more dangerous than any physical deformity ever could be.
Act 3. The Problematic Cure.
Now, things start to slow down as we transition to the climactic transformation scene where the beast magically turns back into a handsome prince. We all expect the happily ever after where the spell is broken, right? But here is a profound critical twist. While Belle beautifully learns to see past the beast's terrifying exterior to the humanity beneath, the story itself ultimately wrestles with its own biases. Through the lens of disability studies, the beast's magical transformation into a perfect, able-bodied prince is actually viewed as a highly problematic cure narrative. It's a concept known as narrative prosthesis, where a physical difference is just used as a plot device that has to eventually be fixed or cured for the story to resolve happily.
While it looks super beautiful on screen, consider the hidden costs of this cure. First off, it demands assimilation. It dangerously implies that to receive a happily ever after and be fully accepted, the disabled or non-conforming other must overcome their differences and blend into mainstream beauty standards. Second, it completely erases the validity of his experience as a beast. Third, it dangerously equates full humanity strictly with able-bodiedness. And finally, as trauma scholars note, the film entirely skips the realistic trauma recovery period. I mean, after a decade of total isolation, the prince just instantly hosts a banquet with a huge smile? It completely ignores the profound psychological readjustment a real survivor would actually need.
So, I really want you to think about this for a second. Why couldn't the beast keep his beastly form and still be considered human? If Belle truly learned to love him for the soul beneath his fur, why did the narrative require him to magically conform back to the corporeal standard to earn his happy ending? Why must the other change to fit the conception of normal, rather than society expanding its definition of acceptance? It really forces us to confront our own internalized biases about what a happy ending is supposed to look like.
Conclusion: seeing the soul beneath.
Let's return to the visual metaphor of that enchanted mirror. But this time, imagine it suddenly shattering into a million pieces, completely breaking society's shallow illusions. The core takeaway from our deep dive today is this. Beauty and the Beast is a masterful tale that exposes the farce of judging a book by its cover. Whether we're looking at the beloved Gaston or the feared beast, humanity is never defined by a handsome face, an able body, or societal status. Those are just arbitrary standards of the normates that we've been conditioned to worship.
True humanity is fundamentally internal. It's found entirely in your capacity for profound empathy, your genuine virtue and kindness, and crucially, your ability to accept others without demanding that they change to make you comfortable. Belle's ability to see these traits in the beasts completely subverts the corporeal standard we analyze today, showing us that true beauty is deeply rooted in how we treat one another.
I'll leave you with this final, echoing thought. What if, instead of demanding that the marginalized, the disabled, or the other conform to some mythical standard of normal, society simply expanded its definition of acceptance? What if we completely dismantled the corporeal standard altogether? Now that is the real happily ever after we should be striving for. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep questioning the narratives around you.